we are joined by our special guest and Specky favourite, John Ruddick. John, welcome to the show.
Hello, Alexandra. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you've written a very interesting piece in Flat White this week that is also super awkward for the Labor Party, as history often is for them. In your piece, you argue that the Labor Party has been hostile to the Constitution since the 1890s. Now, take us back in history, John. What was the Labor Party doing when the Constitution was written? Cheering on democracy, I presume.
Okay, well, the Labor Party became a political force in the early 1890s, and they had representation in most of our colonial parliaments. But they were very much the third force behind the protectionists and the free traders. So across the 1890s, starting in sort of 1890, 1891, there were conferences and meetings, etc., to discuss two questions. The first is, are the colonies now sufficiently mature to have independence from Britain? And I think the consensus there was, yes, they are. And Britain, having learnt its lesson from America and the successful sort of, independence of Canada a generation earlier, Britain said, look, if the colonies want to be independent, we want to cooperate in that process. But the second question should the colonies unite into one country? So we sort of think of federation as two processes, as one big process, but there were two distinct questions. Now, the Labor Party played no role in the 1890s in shaping our Constitution. They were against ratifying the Constitution. They could have had delegates elected to the constitutional conventions. They chose not to. And then when the Constitutional Convention had agreed to a draft, and then most of the colonies, New South Wales didn't, but most of the colonies initially approved it, the Labor Party was urging a no vote. Now, they were radical socialists and radical Republicans, so they were they say, yes, we definitely want independence, but we want to become a republic and things like that. So they were hostile to it before it was born. Now then, what has happened since Federation is that Labor Prime Ministers have desperately tried to change the Australian Constitution. Okay, now they've tried about 26 times, and only one has ever been approved by the Labor Party. Now, most of the non-Labor governments that have also proposed constitutions, most of them have also been said no to, but 8 have been said yes to. Okay, so they've got a much higher success rate. The Labor Party was hostile to our constitution because they were, and arguably still are, democratic socialists, and they didn't like the Australian Constitution because it limited government so much.